Hi there, my name is Katie Groves, and in this video, I'm going to attempt to talk about a very difficult subject, pedophilia. I have quite a trauma history around this topic, and so if you notice me tripping on my words or losing track of what I'm saying, it's because I get triggered and I dissociate. But I'm going to do my best to stay on track and say what I feel needs to be said. So, to start with, I'm just going to talk about where I stand with this issue. I am a survivor of extreme child abuse. Child trafficking, ritual abuse of the satanic kind, Monarch mind control, and part of that was that I was sexually abused by both of my parents and multiple members of my extended family. This means that I have had a tremendous amount of life experience with people who sexually abuse children. And this also means for me that I have gone through the overwhelming fear that I myself would end up becoming a perpetrator or end up becoming a pedophile. As a child, I was absolutely terrified that I was going to become my parents. Thankfully, I have not. I do not think that I have an authentic pedophilic attraction, but I have suffered from what I consider to be something called pedophile OCD, or pedophilic OCD, I'm not sure which it's called, in which the person obsesses on the fear of having sexual attraction to children and gets intrusive images of child sexual abuse, coupled with the panic that one is sexually aroused by them. I have come to understand this all as symptoms of my trauma and not as authentic attractions. But I have dealt with fear that I was a pedophile. And I say none of this to put myself on a moral high ground against those who have actual authentic pedophilic attraction, but to simply state where I currently stand with this subject, so that you know where I'm coming from when I speak on it. I should also say that I in no way support child sexual abuse. I completely understand how damaging that is to children. And so even were I to have that attraction, I do not believe that I would offend. Until recently, I was not aware that there was an online network for non-offending pedophiles. But I encountered a video testimony of a man who's part of an organization called VIRPED, or Virtuous Pedophiles, an online forum for pedophiles who do not want to offend. And I'm going to put a link to his testimony in the description below. This changed the way that I see this issue a lot. And it really helped me to understand that not all people who have pedophilic attraction are evil or wish to harm children or even do harm children. I learned that there are people who have attraction to children who understand that to act on it would harm children, and so they don't. And they may struggle not to, and they may get very lonely and experience a lot of suffering, but they've formed online communities in which they can support each other in not offending because they actually care about children. And I've realized it was interesting that I thought it was absurd to think that a pedophile could care about children. And then I realized that a pedophile is someone who is attracted to children. And just because acting on that attraction would damage the child doesn't mean that the pedophile actually wants to damage children. And part of that pedophile's attraction to children could involve actual love towards children and empathy for them, and that it is probably largely out of that empathy for children that many pedophiles choose not to offend. And this really helped me to empathize with people who struggle with this condition. I would like to be clear that, like I said, I am not in support of child abuse. In fact, I believe that by empathizing with and supporting pedophiles and not offending, we can stop pedophiles from becoming child sex abusers. One of the reasons cited for pedophiles acting on their attraction by, I think it might have been Verped, but it was at least one of these groups, there's multiple of them, is the social stigma and the isolation and the inability to find safe help. And by safe help, I mean to find a therapist who will not report them for saying that they have feelings towards children of their romantic or sexual nature. Current legislation in the United States, as far as I know, still allows a therapist to report a pedophile for saying that they have attraction to children. I assume report to the police. I actually don't know. I should look that up. Maybe report to mental health agencies. I actually don't know who they would be reporting it to. I'm sorry, I should know that before I speak on it. But the point is that therapists can get pedophiles in trouble for saying that they have pedophilic attraction. And I think the law says that they can do this if they feel the pedophile is at risk of harming children. And if therapists were able to properly evaluate this and weren't so clouded by their own bias or misunderstanding of the condition, then I would support this, just like I support therapists in having people committed if they are truly at risk of committing suicide or killing someone else. However, it is apparent that a lot of therapists have the same biases that most people do, in which they don't understand that a pedophile is not necessarily a child molester, and that if someone has pedophilic attraction, they are not overwhelmingly compelled to act on that like some raving, sex-addicted maniac. My father was like that. My father was a meth and heroin and crack addict, and he had no self-control. But not everyone who has pedophilic attraction is like that. In fact, many people, from what I've come to understand about this issue, many people who have this attraction have normal sex drives or even low sex drives, that they have a range of sex drives, just like people of any type of sexual orientation. And I know that for many people, calling pedophilia a sexual orientation is very controversial. In this video, I'm not going to go into that, but I hope that what I just said makes sense. So I think that because there's a lot of misunderstanding where therapists don't realize that many pedophiles can control their sexual desires like anyone else, they are inclined to report them, get them in some kind of trouble, without giving them a chance to work through their issues or find out that they are not actually so much of a threat. And what this means is that you have many pedophiles who are afraid, terrified, to get help in controlling their desires and adjusting to a celibate life, because there's so much misunderstanding. And so I think that more understanding for pedophilia is extremely important. I think that those who think, sorry for the background noise, my boyfriend's making dinner, that for those who think that hating and oppressing and abusing people with this attraction is going to somehow fix the problem of child sexual abuse, I think those people have it backwards. If isolation, stigma, and a fear of getting mental health resources or a lack of adequate mental health resources leads to more child sexual abuse for pedophiles, then pedophiles need to have more access to the empathy and understanding that all beings deserve. And I know that I'm specifically focusing on empathizing and giving support to people with this attraction in order to protect children. And yes, that is the most important thing here. But I also think it is important to give empathy to everyone for the sake of empathy and to make sure that adequate mental health resources are available to everyone. I don't know if I covered this in this video because I've taken a few takes of it by now. This is definitely the best one so far. I hope that I don't mess it up and I get to post this as it is. But I think it's also the valuable thing I've learned that not all child sex abusers are pedophiles, and that many people sexually abuse children not even out of sadism, but for financial gain. As a survivor of the child trafficking industry and of political and military abuse, I have seen people who want to be in the elite and stay in psychopathic predators' graces by joining in and abusing children, even though they do not particularly want to. And these are not moral people. These are just people who happen to lack that attraction, but also lack the empathy to avoid falling into those kinds of groups. So, in understanding child sexual abuse, I think it's valuable to know that there are many kinds of predators. Not all predators are pedophiles. And I don't say this in order to defend pedophiles, but instead say that if we want to address the issue of child sexual abuse, we need to have a broader perspective, a broader understanding of all of the different types of abusers that exist, the reasons people abuse, and how to deal with each one. I need to eat some food and drink some water, so I'm going to stop this here, but I have more things to say, I think, so I may make a part 2. Thank you.